Hello everyone, Stropes here again. I attended Shadows of the Galaxy pre-release this weekend. I went undefeated with a Rey green build. So I'll walk you through the deck that I built, why I made some of the decisions that I made, and go through some of the games. At the end, I'll maybe open the weekly play pack that I got as a prize, show some of the prizes that I got for getting in first place. But we'll start off here first with the deck itself. So I've just separated it out. We've got Rey on Navarro City. I've got my sideboard here unsleeved. Then I've got my space, my ground, my events, and then my upgrades. So I'll go over this in sections based on that. Maybe I should start with the leader though. Rey is a very good leader, especially in sealed and draft and limited environments. People are talking about her in constructed too. Um, but you can tap a resource or spend a resource exhauster to give an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power. It is worth noting that the 2 means if you do have a 2 power unit, you can still use it to get them up to 3. It doesn't really have to be less than that. Her flip side does a similar deal, except it's on attack. You can give the experience token. Also worth noting and important for when you're playing out the games, for ordering of actions and stuff, is that she can do it to herself, so she can give herself make herself into a 3/7, so she can give that experience to herself to get a little bit larger. That restore 3. There's cloud cars, which I'll get to in a second. I was getting ahead of myself and my brain there. The restore, even on 2 and 3, can be really big swings, and I ended up healing quite a bit with her and with cloud cars, which I'll talk about here in a minute. She usually healed around 6 from my base, if not more, if she stuck around longer. Usually people will try and get rid of her pretty quick, because they know what's going to happen with that. But that restore 3 can be a pretty big deal. So first things first, I had one Gray Squadron Y-Wing, a pretty good early unit to drop in Rey. You can buff the Y-Wing up to because you can do her ability on it twice, turns it into a 3/5. And a 3/5 space unit is very particularly pretty hard to deal with, especially in sealed. You don't always open up a lot of space units. There's less of them than like in constructed, where you can just pick however many you want to run. In sealed, it's sometimes harder to open them up, so you're really aiming for like at least 5 space units, I think, unless you've got a really specific build that calls for something else. In this deck, I ended up with 8 space units, which is pretty good, all things considering. I consider 5 to 6 a pretty standard amount. If you can go a little bit more, then you can go up to there. But in this build, I did end up with 8 playables. Next thing was a collection Star Hopper, which is just standard small common unit with a keyword from the set, which is smuggle. You can buff them up to a 3/3 with Rey, and they're just okay, not great, not bad. With most smuggle things on 3, sometimes like common cards and uncommons are a little bit harder to use with smuggle compared to rares, because their smuggle isn't very great for their cost. Like paying 3 for a 2/2 is not particularly good, but it does always give you the option of doing that later in the game if you want to. I was playing one mercenary gunship. I waffled a little bit back and forth on this. With Rey, you can push out a fair amount of damage. Uh, just because of her ability, getting stuff up like these earlier board, like with Gray Squadron Y-Wing, is very good because they have to choose whether they're doing damage to their base or to their units. So with Rey and this, I mean, it's like you're attacking for 3, and then they've got to deal 3 to a unit, or do 2 to their unit, or do 2 to a base. So it puts out a ton of early board pressure, and you'll see that on some of the other units. We've got a good build up, of good curve, so Mercenary Gunship can put a fair amount of pressure, and if they want to steal it, but honestly, that's okay because we're in green, we're in ramp. We got some ramp cards, which I'll go over later. So if they want to get in the game of trying to steal it from us, they're also going to lose that game. And if we need to take it back because they're going to outdamage us, we can always do that if we like absolutely have to. But we have more resources than them. I was never in a game where I had less resources than someone, so I think it's a fine card to use, and especially if you're pushing out early damage, good. So we were on two Twin Pod Cloud cards. I think these are kind of pre-release all stars, maybe sealed all stars, and draft maybe a little less, but I still think they're probably good. It really depends on the leader, and one of the reasons why I didn't do like a set review, like a pre-release set review where you like rate all the cards like you see on Lords of Limited or limited resources, things like that in Magic the Gathering, is just because it really depends on the deck. In a deck like Rey, Twin Pod Cloud cards are very, very good because Rey can immediately tap do to give the bonus to this, right? Same thing in Boba Fett, where because Boba Fett sees the Restore too, so that counts as the keyword. He can turn it into a 3/2 with his ability, also good. In a deck like Hondo, less good. So, like each card that you would go over if you were doing a set review would have to be differentiated basically to very difficult degree because you'd have to be thinking about it per leader, right? Giving it a general overall score isn't particular. I also don't think it's helpful because each card exists in context with other cards, and you're really looking for synergies, which is one thing I really love about Star Wars Unlimited is that you're just looking for those synergies, looking for what cards go with other cards, and some cards are really great with other cards, and some cards are not. So, like being able to identify and differentiate that way on a card by card basis with the like 18 leader options in each set is a skill that you just have to kind of like build up over time too. But in Rey specifically, these did a whole lot of work. They healed probably 6 damage a game, sometimes 8 damage a game, maybe even more than that sometimes. I wasn't keeping particular track, but at least 8 in one game was kept off by cloud cars just on their restore. Especially if you've got other ways in the set, whether that's through rich rewards or you can see these like covert strength down here to give experience. There's a whole lot of ways in the set to give experience to stuff. So once these become 4/4s, 5/5s, they're very, very difficult to deal with, especially because they're in space. And with the restore too, it makes it really, really hard for your opponent to close out the game. So these are like high tier to me, like common cards in this set, really worth looking out for. We're running this HWK freighter. This is just a little bit of filler. It does become a 3/6 if you want it to be with Rey, so it's fine. It's not super good, not super bad, but I really honestly prefer the cloud cars over it because of the restore most of the time. We opened one Adelphi Patrol Wing. This is a very good card. You can attack with a unit, so it gets you up on action economy. If you've got initiative, it's even better. It gives you +2/+0. Fantastic card. 4/6 in space, hard to deal with, can really close out games. Also really great in Han because you can get it out on 4, which is what I was doing in some constructed play. So if you can do that in a pre-release, do that in a sealed pool, fantastic. Here's one of the finishers that's worked out for me each time I got it out. Again, we had some ramp in this deck, which I'll get into when we get into the events. So we were really able to get this out on round 6 most of the time in a 7/8 ambush, who also ramps you because its ability is when it attacks and defeats a non-leader unit, you get to take that as a resource. Fantastic, especially in this set because of smuggle cards like Starhopper here. If you steal their smuggled card, you kill it with the assault cruiser. It goes into your resource, and then you can smuggle it back out. So this card is fantastic. Bomb in sealed and pre-release limited formats, draft, that kind of a thing. Fantastic card, especially if you can ramp into it. Doesn't really synergize with Rey specifically, but one of our bombs, one of our finishers. I think that's our only rare in that stack, so we'll leave that on the top. We'll go into ground units. Warzone Lieutenant is fine. It's 1 for a 2/2, but fine first play though, because it basically turns it into a Battlefield Marine with Rey's ability, because you can use Rey's ability to immediately turn it into a 3/3 on turn 1, and everybody knows Battlefield Marine is a pretty good card, so you can do that with the Warzone Lieutenant perfectly fine in Rey. Follower of the Way. Again, Rey's ability, the tokens still count as an upgrade so it will still get the buff. So if you use Rey to give experience to Follower of the Way, it does become a 3/5, which is good. Definitely worth playing. We only opened one of those. We got Val, another one of our rares. So Val's a pretty interesting card. A few things to look out for on it is it has a bounty. So if your opponent claims the bounty, they can deal 3 damage to a unit. And if they've claimed it, they choose the ordering of actions, which is pretty important on Val because the when defeated ability applies to you, so you get to give 2 experience tokens to a friendly unit. So they're really aiming to kill Val, then kill a unit that Val would be putting the experience on before you can put the experience on it, because otherwise you'll get like a really big unit, right, with Val. So really they're trying to make sure you've got no board when they use Val to keep your board off. I found Val to be pretty good, especially again, if you can put some experience on these space units. You just have to be careful of how you're ordering the actions. If you've got like the Green Squadron A-Wing, you've used Rey to get it up to a 2/4, then when they kill Val, they won't be able to like kill the Y-Wing with it, so then you can put the experience back on it. I had a few plays like that. You just have to be careful, like I said, because they could like kill your Cloud car with Val when they claim it, and then you won't be able to buff it depending on what happens, because Val does the 3, so especially it just depends on what else you've got out, like playing with Val. But she's also pretty hard to get used to, so you can usually set it up to where you've got a fair board before they can do that. And also Rey, because this is 2, again, Rey can turn her into a 3/5, which makes her even harder to get rid of, so you can keep that in mind too. I found Val to be pretty good in pre-release. Actually, pretty good. She was good. Each time she came out, she was able to give the experience, usually to a space unit, turn it into a big unit, and she stayed around and killed a fair amount of stuff on the ground by herself when that happened, and then I was able to kind of like take control of the game that way. She was a good card. Gamorrean Retainers is fine. It's a 3/2. It came in clutch. It actually won me my final game. I'll get into that when I get into the gameplay recap part of the video. But Gamorrean Retainers can be very good if you've got a core amount of like green units, because then it needs to see another green unit to be a Sentinel, otherwise it's not one. It doesn't really synergize with Rey or much else in the deck besides being a 2-cost Sentinel, but you can pull it with cards like Bounty Hunter's Quarry, if we'll get into focus there, because it does cost 3 or less. So you can pull it, especially late in the game. That was my kind of game-winning play in the finals, was I had put this on something, pulled out a retainer, and then they couldn't hit my base, and I could win through that. Village Protectors, another, like the Cloud Cars, I would say this is another MVP of these matches. It's a 2/2 Sentinel that comes out with a shield, so already pretty hard to deal with, pretty annoying for your opponent. Rey just makes them even more so because they become 3/3s, and it's really hard for your opponent to deal much to them. Another thing I should note is, I'll skip ahead a bit here, like for events, stuff like Moment of Glory works really well with them because it's for an entire phase. So you can play Moment of Glory on them, turn them into a 6/6 or a 7/7, and then that will last for the whole phase. And since they're shielded Sentinel, it becomes really hard for your opponent to really do anything for that turn, and you basically can kind of time walk them depending on like how you've arranged your turn, because if they don't have a way to remove it or do anything to it, they're kind of stuck and they just have to pass or claim there. Protector of the Throne is really fantastic in Rey, another potential MVP. If I had more, I would run more. Same thing with them, but we had one copy of each of the kind of key cards, and we were able to get a certain amount like that we needed to like all line up and line together to be able to play it. These are 2/4. If they're upgraded, they have Sentinel, so Rey can upgrade them just with her leader ability. I think it's fantastic in Rey. Again, one of those cards that is better or worse depending on the matchup, because you want to be able to guarantee that you can turn them into a Sentinel, which Rey does through her ability. She turns them into 3/5 Sentinels just by being able to pay the 1 or on her attack. So they're fantastic in Rey, and if you can put upgrades on them, they're good. Sundari Peacekeeper, it's foiled. Don't know if, yeah, there we go. You can kind of see it there. Raid 2 Restore 2 is again fantastic because just like I talked about the cloud car, we've got Restore on the Peacekeepers, we've got Restore on the cloud cars, we've got Restore on Rey. Even if they can get out some early pressure, it's pretty easy to stabilize. And this deck also is pretty aggressive because not only is it the Restore, it's Rey's buffing the power of the unit, so she turns these into 2 power, but raid 2, so they're hitting for 4, plus the restore, plus they're at 6 health. So you're hitting for a ton of damage and you're restoring the damage. So you're able to put a ton of onboard pressure throughout basically the whole game, starting from turn 1 with these lower cost units that you can buff, and then each turn you're playing into something else that you can attack with that's also healing you. It's very hard for your opponent to come back from that, and especially like when you get to your top end, you get to these, it's really just hard for them to deal with because the curve in this build is very, very good. We've got a modded cohort. Also, it's got ambush in raid 2, a fantastic card. It's able basically a 4/4 ambush. Rey again can buff it up, so it becomes a 3/5 with raid 2, so it can be hitting for 5 if it sticks around. Most of the time when I have used this, I've used it to take out a leader or some other unsuspecting bomb unit of theirs. I really was not, I don't think I put experience on this at all in the games that I played, but it is possible, and it is a very, very good card. Roshir Tree Tender, again, very, very good. It's got grit. It's a 2/4. Rey turns it into a 3/5. A 3/5 with grit is just hard to deal with earlier in the game. I do tend to value some of these other cards a little bit higher over it, just because it takes some, it's more of like a longer term game plan where you're trying to like build up the damage on it to be hitting for more, but it can really come in handy and is not a bad card at all. Nima Outpost Constables, again, turns into a 3/7 with Rey. Basically, most of the cards in this deck, I might stop mentioning it now, but I guess we're kind of at the end of the units, but so many of the cards Rey can buff. This is another one, and getting it up to 7 health is very good. It's got Sentinel, again, another way. We've got a whole lot of Sentinels, we've got a whole lot of Restore. It's hard for them to get on our base in the first place, and even if they do, we usually heal the damage. One of the main reasons why I was in green, besides our bomb over there, is because of these 2 discerning veterans. So there's not a whole lot of removal in this set, and a lot of it is capture. So capture works where you put the captured card face down underneath the unit that takes it, which you can see here explained in the parentheses on this one. I think like hyper cards don't have the explanation, so but you can see the more full explanation on this standard frame card. So they're good. They're removal. The main deal with this though is that it's got to be ground. But I pulled a Jabba's Rancor. I pulled, uh, I think a Mandalorian legendary unit with it, or at least maybe it was a Tarful or a Chewbacca in that game. I'll get into that later. Someone opened a legendary Mando, a Chewbacca, a Tarful, like tons of very good cards in those colors, and a Val, I think. So I know like in that game, these came in very handy. Just a short way to say is just that they're very good because they can capture their removal on a stick. So similar in Magic, probably to something like man, I think it might be called like Faceless Menace, where you grab a card, you stick it underneath till that card leaves play, then it comes back. There's also cards like Ravenous Chupacabra or Necrotal that are like creatures that remove stuff. So it's like creature unit in this case, removal, very good even at 5, because your opponent is going to have bombs. They're going to have stuff like Mercenary Company, they'll have stuff like Cargo Juggernaut or like a Jabba's Rancor, and you have to be able to get rid of it. If you cannot get rid of it, you're just going to lose. So you really also need to save these unless you know you're going to win by taking out a small Sentinel unit. That can also be useful because you can take out their Sentinel, then you can just start hammering the base and get yourself into a winning position, especially with cards like Moment of Glory where you buff your unit and then you can just hit in for like 8 and then you know you're going to win next turn. So you can do plays like that. These are very, very useful, high value cards. Then we've got the bounty hunter keyword. We've got Mercenary Company, which is a reprint from Spark, just a good all-around finisher. Same thing with Cargo Juggernaut. These are both reprints. So I'll talk about them kind of together. Mercenary Company ended up winning me a few games, even though like it's a common, people are used to it. Ambush, overwhelm, 5/5 is just good. Sometimes you can hit, especially if they're jamming up the ground with a unit like these village protectors. You run them over on top of it and you're still hitting the base for 3 late in the game. Can be a game-winning play, won me more than a few games. Cargo Juggernaut gets you, again, more heal and keeps you in the game. Plus the shield is like just really hard for people to deal with. It just is a big hard unit that sticks around, and it even whacking for 4 again late in the game, you're really just trying, because you can put so much early board pressure on them with all of these cards, they really get down to having like 7, 6 health. So if you can stick one of these and keep it on board and get that last damage in, that's really what you can do with those. Upgrades, we're a little light on the upgrades, or events, I guess I should say. We're going to upgrades over there. Covert Strength, I think is fine. That experience token, like I talked about on cloud cars and some other things. In this deck, I had a number of ways to put experience on stuff, not just with Rey. A few things in upgrades. And there's also rich rewards, which I might have run, although that might be up in the air, because we had so many playables that we opened from here. But healing too and giving experience is good. Plus it has smuggle, and smuggle is always fantastic in sealed environments, just because you can put it down early, you don't feel terrible about it if you don't need to heal and you don't need the experience. You can do that. But also just paying 1 to put an experience, that can really swing the game, especially if you're trying to trade one thing and you keep at 1 health on something, you get rid of their big thing, especially early in the game, you're trying to keep around a cloud card to be able to heal and kind of start to snowball. This deck really starts to snowball if it can keep stuff out, and Covert Strength is just another way to do that. We open 2 Spark of Hopes, again, maybe another MVP of my matchups, because with these, we're able to get to our assault cruisers even quicker. And in 30 card decks, you're usually able to draw into your bombs because you get down to like maybe like 8, 6 cards like that in your deck. So I was usually drawing into this, and even if you're not, Spark of Hopes are a fantastic card to be able to put stuff back into play as a resource. If you have more smuggle, it's even better because you can put your thing that died that has smuggle back into play and then smuggle it back out. So that's why you see the Falcon over there, because it's good with stuff like that. You can put it back in, loop it back. But that was in the sideboard, that Falcon. So these cards really helped me out a lot. I was able to get my gunship pretty early and start hitting when I was able to do that. Moment of Glory really won me my finals match. Each game that it came out, I was able to hit for 12 one turn because I had a number of 4, like my I think I had like my Adelphi ship out and I buffed it, swung for 8. I hit with maybe like my let's see, the Cargo Juggernaut on the ground, and then I was able to, yeah, like close out the game that way. It helped a lot because sometimes when the game is close, if you can do something like that, like you can just win. So this really helped, and in my final match I put this on the Village Protectors, and it really swung the game when I did that too. Let me pull out the rares from here so I can put those on top just so we can see like what rares we were running. Val's a rare, and is she the only rare? She might be. Okay, so there's 2 of our 6. Then we got those. Although sometimes you can open more than 6 because of the way that the card slots work in the packs. Okay, so we're getting to upgrades. This will be the last part of this section. So we've got Bounty Hunter's Quarry. This came in clutch in my finals match too. I was able to pull a Gamorrean guard. It had Sentinel, and it pulls it straight out onto the battlefield. Really fantastic, especially for 1. There's a whole lot of Sentinel units that you'll be running into anyway, so I think bounties are pretty good. I just didn't end up running many because there weren't a lot that I thought were particularly good in this deck, just from like what I had opened. So I really only ended up running this one, but I think they're fine to run if you can get good ones, because you're going to be killing some units anyway, just because there's so many Sentinels across colors too, like those guards in green, a lot in blue. I was running 1 Heroic Resolve, so this was the main thing that I thought back and forth about. I often slotted in this Millennium Falcon instead of Heroic Resolve, and I played Heroic Resolve, man, maybe only once or twice in the whole like number of games that I have played. It is good though because of its action ability, which is where you can defeat it and attack and give it +4, +0, and overwhelm. So just like Moment of Glory down there to kind of finish out a game, I think it has its uses, but oftentimes because of it was pre-release, so games would go longer. They go to higher resource numbers. I was really finding myself wanting things like Falcon instead of this. I would draw this late game and it's just kind of like, eh. But drawing an early game, it's perfectly fine. But like late game, you kind of want other stuff. And Falcon also has smuggle, so you can resource it early, pull it out later. Versus this, where like you're if you resource it early, you're never getting it back. So it's okay. It's not bad, and I see its uses, but it is off aspect in this deck. That's the main thing, right? Because it's at 3. So if it was on aspect, I wouldn't even think about it. But because it's at 3, it's kind of not fantastic for me in this build, but is okay, and is one of our rares too. And here's another rare. Speaking of MVPs, this thing is great, especially if you can get it out early. Inspiring Mentor attaches to non-vehicles, so you can't put it on your space units really, but you can play it on your ground units, an early ground unit like turn 2, and then you're able to start attacking with it and giving experience to the stuff that you do play in space. So it can be a little slow to get going because it costs 2, so sometimes you're not able to get it out really quick. But it's also when defeated, so even if they kill it right away, and it's hard to do because it gives it the buff, and if you've given it the buff with Rey, like let's say you turned Val into a 3/5, and then you put this, then she's like a 4/6, right? And then like even when they're defeated, they give the experience. So even if they kill it right away, you can immediately stick that on a cloud car or something, turn it into a 3/3, or you've probably again you just have to pay a lot of attention when you're playing with Rey, because if you're right, you want to put Rey's experience on that cloud car, turn it into a 3/3 while this is still out. Then this unit, even if they kill it right away, you can put that experience on the cloud car, turns it into a 4/4. So there's a lot of ways where you can potentially misplay if you're not paying attention to the order of actions and the order that you play things, in the order that you give experience, play upgrades, things like that. It's really important, especially in this set, to do that kind of a thing. We're also playing a Van-based grapple shot. I don't know as I really even ever played this. I do think that +2/+2 is just a good thing to be doing. Just like the experience, it's just like another version of that, because being able to buff power, being able to buff toughness, you're really trading sometimes with your opponent and trying to gain incremental advantage. And even just having like a little bit of that on a card can help out quite a bit. So just a little bit of filler, but also I think good, definitely playable, and especially if you can stick this on Rey or something, fantastic. She becomes pretty big, and because leaders basically kind of start in hand, you can just stick it on them right away. Right, like you attack with Rey, she becomes a 3/7. Then you stick this on her, she becomes a 5/9. Right, so you can do that kind of a thing, and it's always worth noting, right? Like what can go on your leader, what synergizes with them. So for the sideboard, I mean, I think your whole, like everything you open kind of counts as your sideboard and sealed, but these are the things I was kind of thinking about. I actually wasn't seriously considering Smuggler's Aid. I pulled in Falcon sometimes, and I even like played it. Again, I would take out the Heroic Resolves for that, and maybe that's what I would do if I was like just redoing the deck, but I wanted to kind of keep it the same how I had built it from the start. Um, Without like changing it at all. I really made no changes. This is the deck as it went through every single game. The first game was always played with this, and sometimes, depending on if I thought the matches would go very long, I would pull in a Falcon. I didn't end up pulling in any of these other cards really. Top target, I thought like if I needed some more healing, but I had so much restore like on all the units, really this would not have done anything. And again, I don't need bounties because I don't have stuff that really cares about it. Public Enemy is another thing to seriously consider, and maybe this for the Heroic Resolve would be something to do, because giving a shield to something like I talked about with the being able to trade for their stuff, keep your stuff around a little bit longer, is really what tends to win sealed events and draft events a little bit more than constructed, because it just swings the game completely differently outside of like a way that you see in constructed most of the time. So keeping like being able to put like a shield on something for 0 is good. So this is a fantastic card too. I just didn't run it because I had like so many playables in here already, but this is probably better than Resolve, I would think, depending on the matchup though, again, because sometimes you're able to push out so much damage so quick, and you know that your opponent is trying to like play the long game, in which case Heroic Resolve is better in those instances, right? Finn Rao, I just did not have a lot of upgrades, and I didn't open a lot, which we'll get to when we go through the rest of the pool. So I didn't have a lot. I mean, I had the grapple shot, but that was basically it. And she's fantastic. Finn Rao's fantastic if you can give them like this -2/-2, great, super great ability. 5/6 for 6 is all right, but putting them like if you upgrade them with the grapple shot, they're like 7 7-8, and then they're giving stuff debuff. So it's good if you can get it, especially because you can kill stuff with it, and it doesn't care whether it's ground or space. It's a good card. I just did not have any synergies with it. Enforced Loyalty is not really anything I considered running. This was just kind of in the stack. Same thing with Endless Legions. I don't see how you would even get anywhere near being able to run that, because it would be out of aspect pretty much no matter what you were doing. So you'd have to pay 16 for it, which is half of your deck. And I don't think you're resourcing up to that amount in sealed, because you usually stop around like 8 or 9. I mean, this gun, like if you open like 2 of these and had a lot of like double green and had like a ton of green stuff and some miracle world, like maybe I went up to 9 and 10 usually with this, and I had stopped resourcing because what happens is you need to like spam the board to put in the last bit of damage, or you need to keep these, or you need to keep that, and you need to be putting that pressure on. You can't just take turns off to kind of like wait it out. So there's really no way I think that anyone is ever playing this in a pre-release pool unless they get some magical Christmas land kind of opening. That'll be it for like the main deck portion. We'll get to this part here next. All right, we've laid out the rest of our pool here. You can see where maybe I was leaning as I was opening the packs compared to where we ended up. We did open Dryden Voss as a legendary. We opened Dr. Eva Zen. We opened Evacuate, which is a little less good in sealed environments just because it like bounces everything back. Doesn't really deal with the threat. I mean, fantastic and constructed, a little less good here. We did open Akira. You can see all of our leaders up here. It really skews heavily toward villainy. In fact, I mean, the only thing we opened outside of Rey was Bo-Katan. Other than that, we opened 4 villainy leaders, all different though, so we didn't have like a lot of repeats. We still had pretty good options. So you can see like the overall look here. For the yellow deck though, right, we could have paired Cad Bane plus green. Really, we wanted to end up in green because of our high drop assault cruiser ship. So whether that was Moff Gideon plus yellow to get Dryden Voss, Eva Zan, maybe even Evacuate. We could have also gone with Cad Bane because these are both Underworld, and we have a number of Underworld stuff over here. But as you'll see in a second, I just didn't think it was as good of a deck. We would have needed to go in green with Dryden Voss because his ability, it's good. He's shielded. When played, you can choose a captured card, and then you can play it for free under your control. So you're really looking for stuff like Capture in green, which I would have run main deck, but I didn't because we didn't get any. Capture allows you to take control, capture the unit, not take control, but capture the unit that is in the same arena. So if you've got a ground unit, you can capture your opponent's ground unit. You've got a space unit, you can capture any of their space unit. It's a little bit different than Discerning Veteran, who needs it to be a non-leader ground unit, so it's specified specifically for the ground. So since we did open 2 of those, I was a little biased toward this kind of a play. The thing is, I do not think this is particularly strong, which is why I went with this other deck instead, because it takes a whole lot of setup, and only having these and a few other cards as setup is not enough. Maybe if you have 5 or 6 or a really reliable way to guarantee your capture, I would have more seriously considered it if one of these had been Jabba, because Jabba comes out and then captures. The fact that this is limited only to ground, and this is the only green capture that we got, made me more hesitant to do that. Like I said, with Jabba, because Jabba can grab space or ground, I think he would be fantastic in Jabba. So if I had Jabba, that's also guaranteed in the leader zone capture, which none of these other leaders really provide. Cad Bane is looking for a lot of Underworld units to be played, so it's a lot. Stuff like Lady Proxima works better with him. Gideon wants small units to buff. He's looking, Hondo Ohnaka is looking for smuggle, and Bosk is looking for bounties, and Kira is looking basically kind of like for grit. So I did not think, like I said, if I had gotten Jabba, I might have tried this, but with just these 2, I did not think it was enough. And we were sacrificing, like, if we went this route, we would have been running. I can go through the rest of the cards in that slot. We did open Dr. Eva Zan. He's pretty good. 3/3 shielded on 2. can be kind of hard to deal with. Evacuate, less good. It's a foil though, so that was pretty fun to open. But less good just because it bounces everything. I mean, it can save you if you're going to close out the game, like you're going to drop like a bomb. But even like dropping Dryden Voss after that, it's just like anti synergy, right? You want to have the capture, you don't want to bounce everything back, then play Dryden Voss, right? So they're just like these cards are kind of like working against each other a little bit. We just needed like a little bit better capture. I'll go over like some of these yellow that we had. We had Cloud Rider, which is Underworld, a privateer ship. This is better though, I think, in Gar because it'll become like a 3/2 on it shielded than like in some of these other builds, depending. Because just a 2/2 that might not even come out with the shield is kind of meh. Again, this is something I think is like fantastic in Rey because it can become a 3/3 with the shield, right? So I think a lot better in certain decks, a little worse in other decks. Another one of those things that this is like why differentiation between the leaders makes a whole lot of difference. This card is basically an auto include with certain leaders and certain color pairings, and is not in others, right? Chain code collector versus like magic, I should say, where like some cards, if you're like in green and you're in a draft or in sealed, they're auto picks, right? This is an auto pick, but just depends on your color combination, which isn't always the same like you see in Magic. Chain Code Collector, it needs a lot of bounties to be at his best. Again, like not a whole lot of like particular like ways to do that. He is Underworld, so he does like synergize with Cad Bane, but other than that, Smuggler Starfighter. So we really only opened like 4 playable units. At least they are like on curve a bit where you go 2 3 4, but this is not a lot. Like this does not make a deck, right? This is not like the other half of the deck. It's just not enough cards. Maybe if we had 2 Smuggler Starfighters, or even like we had 1 Relentless Pursuit. So again, like with Dryden Voss, if we went that route with the green, black, yellow kind of a build, we would be able to use this. But again, this needs to be in the, you pick the unit and then let's see. I don't think it cares about, it captures an enemy non-leader unit, same as or less than for cost. If it's a bounty hunter, you can shield it. So better, like if you got bounty, right? Like you could chain code collect something. You do need to have a large unit to stick it on. So like again, a little bit of anti-synergy because like with Dryden Voss, he's at 7. He'd be really good to capture something, except he wants to take the capture that a bounty hunter has done. So you really need to have something else. So maybe if we had like 2 or 3 of these plus Dryden Voss, just so that we had like a certain amount. And Mocklunky is good. It's a good card, but again, we've got like 3 hits for it in the yellow, right? It's just like not enough. We had Surprise Strike, a fantastic card, but this is all of our yellow, right? It's just not enough, and we'd be sacrificing a ton of power. Um, that like if we went into that color, we had these 2 sparks, we'd be sacrificing this, we're sacrificing Inspiring Mentor, like in these really strong plays, right? Like throughout these like ways to snowball and really like take control of the game, plus the ramp to ramp into our late game bombs and close out the game quicker, right? So I think it's possible, especially if I had like 1 or 2 more cards, but I think with the cards that we have, that would be the Dryden Voss line is sacrificing a ton of power compared to what the green heroism build would be doing. With Bo-Katan, we just didn't like same kind of thing. Well, I can go into the rest here. We had Pillage, which is a good card in red. We got the gunship. Bo-Katan is double red though, so you'd be paying 4 for her. Daring Raid, a fantastic card to deal damage. We had Hunting Nexu, Detention Block Rescue. This is fine as removal. It deals 3 damage to a unit if the unit is guarding something that's captured at 6, and you'll see a fair amount of that. So I think this is good to use. You can even main deck this in sealed. Clean challengers. We also do we have 2 of those guild targets. I didn't sort all of these out because I was just not going in these colors again. Like there's not, we got, if we're like going with Bo-Katan, we've got the clan challengers. We don't even have, I mean, we've got Bo-Katan herself, but again, that's it. And you need to be playing a lot of Mandalorians for that to matter. And there's just really not like a good line here, right? Even if we threw every unit together into one deck, we've got 1 2 3 4 units there, and then like one double aspect. It's just not probably enough unless these all synergy, like if they were all Mandalorians or they all had some kind of upgrade synergy or something like that. But we've got uh, like aggro card, we've got another aggro card, but then this costs 4, so probably again like you probably wouldn't even be running this on 4. It's just probably not worth it. And this is like a finisher, but then what? We got 4. It's just not enough. We don't have enough to like put that through. The other deck we ended up with 16, 15 playable ground, I think, right? 4 is not going to get you there as half of your color. So we just didn't end up with enough. One Mandalorian warrior. Again, you need more. Like we didn't hit basically any of the low cost ones in here. So it's just hard. You need probably like 2 of these and then playables across number or a different curve to be able to play into a curve to curve out your Mandalorians to play something like Bo-Katan. I think it's just hard to do. We also, I think smuggle is mostly like kind of like a green mechanic. I guess we would look at like the bounties, right? Like for Bosk, right? Like maybe Bosk Dryden, but we just did not open a lot of them. We got these two, right? That's not enough for Bosk, I don't think, right? And we didn't open any colorless ones, right? No rich rewards. If we had like 2 or 3 rich rewards, right, that would get us up to like 5 or something, especially if we had, some of the better bounties, like this one, which can push out a lot of damage. And even like drawing is pretty good, but like 0 cost bounties that we can just slam out on stuff for boss. But really, again, like we had these two and that's it. So boss, no, not really. And we don't, yeah, just not enough. We do have these, so it is worth noting. Like in Villainy, we had Hutchinsman, which is good. I mean, it's fine to run. It's a 3/4 with the shield, so it's okay. Ruthless Assassin has Overwhelm, and he can deal 2 damage to something when he comes out, so he can knock off a shield. Definitely playable. This is a fantastic, probably constructed playable card. 3/2 Sentinel in space, and we also had a Pirate Battle Tank. So if we went for that like Dryden Voss green build, this is kind of why these were together, because I was like, oh well, we can stick these into the deck, which does give us like another underworld, another underworld, another underworld, another underworld, and underworld, right? And then Lurking TIE Phantom is Imperial. So we do end up with this many underworlds to bounce, right? Like from all clunky. So we'd have had like a few more. So I do think there's like a potential world. It was just like not enough uh synergize it, like enough synergy, enough buff. Like again, I think we'd be sacrificing a lot of power. We would have had no ramp, and we do not have like the main thing I guess I should say too is those I'll pull them back up, those discerning veterans here, like they don't keep stuff off the board forever. They don't, it doesn't, they come back when this gets killed, and it only has 4 health, so basically any leader can come out and kill it. They can ambush a modded cohort into it. It is not hard to kill this. So you're really using this to take a bomb off the board for a turn or two till you can win. Or you're taking a sentinel off the board for a turn or two till you can win. It is not, unless you've got like some big shielded unit that you can, like a Dryden boss, who you can use to capture stuff. Capture doesn't really last very long. It's not permanent. So what happened even when I played these in games is you play it, they take a turn or two, then they get rid of it either right away, but it comes back, and they can't hit you with it right away. But you did at least prevent it for that turn, or the next turn they get rid of it. About a turn or two, this will probably be gone unless you've hit it behind a sentinel or something. So again, I mean, there's not a good way in these colors to hide it behind a sentinel besides guards, and we only opened one of those. So by the time we played Dryden Voss, even though he's good, these are probably going to be dead, or whatever we capture with, I mean, this, the yellow one where you can, let's see if we can find it. The yellow card where you can it's got Cad Bane on it. Where is it at? Relentless Pursuit is a little better because at least you can like stick it on something that's gigantic, right? Like you could use Jabba's Rancor to get something, which again, but we didn't open any Jabba's Rancors. I think, right, you could use Jabba's Rancor to grab something, but also if you had like a good bounty hunter that was a rare or like a top end that you could like stick that on, then that might work too. But again, like we just didn't have those. I mean, like the biggest one is this. So I think it was possible if we had, like I said, we just needed that like critical mass of specific cards, and we are like barely out of being able to do it. Like I see that it would probably work sometimes. I just think it would not be as consistent as the deck that we ended up with. And then we've got these in black red. So these are kind of more like aggro cards, Saboteur, Bounty, but it's like a 1 drop on like a 2/3 body. So again, it like puts out lots of damage, but the drawback is that you draw a card. Someone played this against me. I just don't think, even at uncommon, that they're particularly good. Like, I guess if you've got a lot of bounties, it's fine, but they didn't have a bounty out at the time, and then you're paying like a tapped 3/7 on 5 is just kind of rough. Deathwatch Loyalist are good. I mean, like these in like Kira or something. We also did open Brutal Traditions. We had 1 Pike. We had 2 clients, so we could get like a lot of healing if we were in blue black, plus a Super Commando squad. So if we had opened like Hylobon Enforcers or something, right? I mean, like 2 or 3 of those, and then maybe like another 1 or 2 things, right? I mean, again, this is like almost to there. Kira's kind of like hard to play in sealed, just because you got to get a certain amount of things. Her ability is that when you deploy her, you heal all damage from everything, but then you deal damage equal to everything, equal to half its HP. So she kind of like, she works well with grit because she's basically like healing and then like giving them the buff. So if you get certain stuff, she could work. But again, we're just like probably like 6 or 7 cards, honestly, like out of that deck probably. um we can go on here to like the yellow. So here's some more cards. I think these Cartel Turncoats are super good in Ray if you're in yellow. I had, when I did some testing on Force Table, because these turn into 3 Force from the first turn. You can put a ton of damage, especially like if you get multiples of these, you get some other space units being able to hit with 3/4s in space. And then even if they can draw a card from it, by then they've taken like 9 damage from it usually. It's really hard for them to come back from. So, but we only opened like 2 cards like in this color pairing, and we had like a ton of stuff, a ton of great stuff in green. So that's why we went with that. Only opened like 2. We were right, like we had 2 of these again, right? I mean, like Bo-Katan needs a ton of stuff to be able to run this, and I just don't really think that you would be able to do that. So that's overall card pool analysis. If you think of, if you saw something that I missed, put it in the comments. Like I said, I think we're like really close to another deck here being able to go that route, but I just think the consistency of the original deck that we posted with the deck that I won with, just like consistent throughout the curve, tons of great cards, each spot on the curve, plus Rey can always buff them if we've got the extra resources, plus we can snowball with some of these other things, plus we can ramp. I just don't think the other options were like as great, at least at that point. So from there, I'll go into the prizes. All right, so these are the prizes that I got. I've already opened this. I was really excited to get, as you can see, these are the Gamegenic tokens. I had ordered these, pre-ordered them about 4 months before launch from an online store, and they were back ordered like a lot of Gamegenic products have been, and I was not able to get it after, I think it had been between 6 or 7 months, maybe more. I just ended up canceling my order, getting a refund for it. But full circle, I came around, like I got them as a prize. They were giving away a pack of the tokens, so I was really happy to get them. Immediately ripped them open, stuck them in here. I've been looking for them. I actually ordered some on Etsy from a seller that kind of all link together and stack, and they're this size, so they slide into a Gamegenic box. So I might do a review of those when I get them in, but I'm happy to have these two. These are great, especially being able to just stick stuff on there. I was taking dice, and you're trying to put like 1 dice on the top of the card for the damage, and if you've got experience, you're putting like experience card below it and then putting dice on that, and it's sometimes hard to keep track of, especially for your opponent. But I didn't really have like another way to do it, and I couldn't get any dice, or get any of these tokens. So happy to have them. These are Minder tokens also, right? nice to keep track of like when actions happen. Fantastic. So happy to get those. I also got, they had leftover pre-release tokens. You could get these if you attended a pre-release for Spark. They had some left over, so they gave me this one, and I also got one for Shadows of the Galaxy. So neat to have the initiative token for the set. This is just kind of like a generic one. I believe these have this on the back, and this one is just blank on the back, but it's nice to just have like event specific ones, especially if you get like a favorite set later down the line. You can use the initiative token of your favorite set. Just kind of a fun thing to do. They also, and I had these out before because I hadn't actually opened my Gideon and Mando pack because I decided that I wasn't using them in the draft. So they also gave me judge copies of these, which are really fun. They've got that surge foiling on them, which looks really nice. Plus, just nice to have like promo copies, special kind of blinged out copies of the cards, and just have those. So I got they gave me both of those, and then I got packs, but I had already opened them. I saved this though to open this with the on camera. So they gave me a weekly play booster for Spark. So not for the next set, but this will have stuff from Spark in it. I also won booster packs for coming in first. Let's see what we've got here. We got Hyper Leia Organa, we've got Battlefield Marine, and then Hyper Bosk as our rare there. So I don't have all of these yet, so I'm kind of like slowly working on it. I wasn't going to like weekly events, but I'm able to kind of go like once a week to stuff now. So I'm kind of slowly filling in some of these that I've got. I really like the ones for the new set too. I think that Django looks fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Uh, yeah, fantastic with that like kind of front forward aiming different kind of art there. Okay, so from now I'll go to the recap of my matches. So I'll go over each of the matches I won to go over kind of just like overall an event recap. All right, so I've laid out my deck here on the bottom. I've got my main deck over here, sideboard over here, and then the three decks that I faced in the event here at the top. We did 3 rounds, so at the end, someone would be undefeated. I was able to win all of my rounds. The other person I went into in the finals there with a Mandalorian blue build had won all of their matches up until then. So, first round, I went up against a Gar Saxon red deck. The deck they on the top end they had Crate Dragon to kind of finish out the game there. They also had a number of space units that they were able to, it was kind of like a battle between space. They had stuff where I think like on the ground they were running Hylobon Enforcers, which don't really get the buff from Gar Saxon, but are like a little hard to deal with being 1/4s because they can kind of deal a little bit of damage, get hit back for the and then be hitting for like a ton of damage. So some of that stuff can be like kind of hard to deal with, even if it doesn't exactly synergize with Gar. I was able to kind of come out late game. I was able to just kind of like disrupt what they were doing. Uh, first game I was able to get out these twin pod cloud cars. I was able to buff them either with Rey, or I would use Inspiring Mentor to buff them up, make them pretty big. They would be pretty hard to deal with, and then I was able to heal, be whacking in space. They either didn't draw into what their removal, or they couldn't really deal with it. Second game, they kind of knew what I was up to. I tried to do that similar thing again. I even ended up putting the red rare heroic resolve on one of them, trying to keep them around a little bit longer. But they kind of like used all of their gas in a kind of a risky play to get rid of my units. They were able to do it though; it paid off. And then my buffed units, I wasn't really able to come back because I had spent so many resources trying to keep them around. I was trying to Inspiring Mentor, trying to heroic resolve. They ended up like 2-for-1ing me. I had a Val out both games. Val really helped me the first game, put that experience on my space units, helped me come through that way. In the second game, I wasn't able to stick any space units because either drew into or they already had all of their removal, and they just got rid of everything, then killed Val, and then I had no board, so I wasn't really able to like come back from that once it happened. And then they dropped a Crate Dragon at that point, and I couldn't really come back from that at that point. I did end up winning the third game. I don't think I even had my assault cruiser. I don't think I played this assault cruiser until my second round of games. It's really, once you get out these patrol wings, I had buffed some of my space units. I was able to keep enough out that I could stick the experience on it, keep the experience on them, and then they weren't able to really do much to me after that. And then I just kind of closed out the games with just buffed normal units that had like experience on them. If I would have drawn into it, would have helped me out, but I don't believe I drew it in that first game. I think I just had like buffed normal units, and I was able to kind of use these discerning veterans to pick off their ground units long enough that they weren't able to really like damage me. They had that red black Wookiee, the bounty hunter, and I was able to kind of like knock that out, keep it off the board for a little bit, things like that, just to be able to close out the game with. I think I really won with this patrol wing buffed in the sky. I think on the ground I had something with inspiring mentor, buffed it up to like a 5/7, a few maybe even like higher than that, and was able to close it out with that, because this is really hard to deal with even as a common in space. It's just really rough, especially if you've been putting consistent pressure on them already. You can really kind of close it out. The second series of games I went into were against a Cad Bane green deck. On their top end they had Jabba's Rancor, and it was basically just kind of a mishmash of a bunch of different underworld units. They got the ping off on me pretty much every turn. I think Cad Bane, I know people love the character. He's a cool character. The art is really great, really fantastic. I'll bring it up here. Really would look really especially great in a hyper frame where it's borderless. You know, really great looking card, cool character. But I really think people, because they see underworld synergies, and then if they open a bunch of underworld cards, they kind of like tend to throw it all together. I just don't think that that ends up working out very much. And I've fallen into that trap myself when I was practicing on Force Table. A few drafts I had tried to run Cad Bane. I opened two 4 LOMs. I opened two Zuckuses. I had like a lot of stuff that you would need, and even that isn't always really enough to come through, even against like an AI opponent, because they pick where the damage goes. So if they're on grit, they can put it on their units anyway, and they want it to happen. And that can happen whether that's like in Wookiees really want the damage on them, so you're like helping them out, but also against like decks like Gar Saxon, who may be running Hylabon Enforcers or cards like that, or Death Watch. You're helping out a fair like there's a non-insignificant chance that you're helping out the deck. And even if you're not helping out the deck in against this deck, and this, it wasn't really helping me, but like, because I'm able to put experience on stuff with Rey, and right, like have these gray squadrons go up, right? I mean, like I can put it on them once or twice and not even sort of feel bad about it, right? And it's not even like these Sundari Peacekeepers. I mean, okay, you play, even if you play like three things and I have to deal 3 damage to it, I mean, it's not the end of the world. And it only like procs once, right? Because I think you've got to like um you got to exhaust him to do it. So it's not even like you can do it, like it's over multiple turns. So even if you play one each, I think the better way to kind of like simplify it and think about it is to think like, okay, let's say you play one each turn and you're able to deal 1 damage that your opponent decides where they put it each turn. Is that good in your deck? I don't always think that it really is, especially compared to someone like Gideon, who is a little more like under stated maybe, and or maybe people just don't like the character as much. But I see a lot of people running Cad Bane when I think there's better things to be doing. And that's not saying he's bad, and I think he could be good and constructed too if people can find like a good way to build him. It's just that when I have seen, like when he's been run against me, and when I have even tried, like I've tried to do it and fill my deck completely with underworld cards, even then it doesn't always work the way that you like really want it to. Because even if you open all underworld card, let's say you've got like a third of your deck is not underworld because it's a sealed pool and you just don't open that many, he's really not super good in that instance, just because you're not even like hitting him consistently to like be able to do that. He does have like nice stats in the sense of the 8, but Each time he came out, I was able to kill him like really easily just because he does two back. I just like run one or two things into him and he would just die. So I don't know. I think there's maybe a way that you can run him. It's just pretty hard to do. This deck in particular, like I said, had late game Jabbas and a ton of early game removal. So they played a lot of so they're just like ambushing into me, like Cloud Riders, things like that. And then I just like didn't have a board. I didn't have a board until turn 5 or 6, I think both games. But even then, like I was able to just like if they did drop the Rancor, I just discerning veteran to them. Like I just saved it because I knew they had like late game stuff. And I was able to like after they removed everything, I just play this, play my I did end up playing my assault cruiser in those games. And once you like land both of those, that this deck doesn't have like a great way to get rid of it. I think Jabba's pretty good there because Jabba can like grab this assault cruiser because it doesn't care. But sometimes the removal is a little bit more hard to get like in this deck because you're kind of relying on that bounty hunter card of his where you are looking for specific costs or you're relying on the discerning veterans who only care about ground units. So I went 2-0 against that Cad Bane deck, 2-1 against the Gar Saxon deck, and then this last build was my most difficult one by far, which was kind of, I mean, because of the pool they opened some fantastic cards. It's also a great player. That's the when I did my, if you listen to my store showdown recap, the Boba Yellow player from way back then that I played that beat me there. So it's kind of like a rematch there. I hadn't played them since, so we're really going to, rematch kind of happening there. They opened the legendary Mandalorian unit, which put them firmly in heroic blue. They also opened Chewbacca rare unit. They opened Val, which we've kind of gone over because I had a Val in my deck. They also opened Mandalorian armor as a rare. I know it was like an equipment. I believe it's the armor, but it has like a helmet sitting on the table, so maybe it's a helmet. I don't know. But it's a rare Mandalorian upgrade though. They also opened that, and they might have even opened another one. So it's like four of their on color rares. Also, like kind of like the best ones that you're looking for, and they all go pretty well together too. They're not really like working against each other. Like I talked about Dryden Voss and Evacuate in my pool kind of working against each other because you need to have a captured thing out for Dryden Voss to get it. You don't want to just return everything to hand because he wants something to be captured. So those all, I mean, at least don't work against each other. And Mandalorian, which they played to Val, like, and that was like a major play in the third match that we had, was they used the legendary Mandalorian unit to give those shields to Val, which made her like really hard to deal with. They had also set it up to where they played Foundling and then the rare Mandalorian upgrade. I believe it's the armor on her. So she became a Mandalorian, had the upgrade, and then she cost too less. So then when they drew into the Mandalorian later, so she was suited up with all this stuff. I believe she was like a 5'7", 5'8", or something like that at that point with like double shields, right? Like pretty hard to deal with. Um, so it also really turned into like a game of who can get their village protectors out because I know they had like at least one. Here's Val again, and then these village protectors, they were running at least one of those. So that we were coming down to like the wire in a number of the games, and it was like who can land their village protector, who can keep it around the longest, and then who can hit, which kind of revolved around control of space. And I think I had the better space in there with because I was able to put like consistent pressure with the patrol wing or the cruiser. I got the cruiser out at least in two of the games, and it did help me win. The first one I won, which I had said way earlier in the video, but I'll recount it here, was I had a moment of glory and I did it. I played it on my patrol wing and I hit for 8, and they had lethal on board on us if they had claimed they could kill or but they hadn't attacked yet, right? They would have to full out attack us 2 turns and they would have lethal. But I was able to get ahead of them with Moment of Glory, push in 12 damage, and then they had to claim because if we claimed, we would immediately kill them. And so that's how we won that first game. They beat us the second game they were just able to keep a lot of stuff on board. They even got this assault cruiser because Chewbacca just cares about it having less health. So they ran like a 3 attack unit into our assault cruiser and then played Chewbacca and then like blew this out of the sky with Chewbacca. So they were able to get that game. We couldn't stick much around and they were able to really kind of jam us up with those village protectors. And then the final game came down to the wire. They were really great games, a lot of back and forth, and it came down to really small plays like ordering of actions. Fantastic gameplay to Jeremy there. Really, I mean, and like what I love about the game, because you really have to think of like, do I put the upgrade on it now? Do I claim now? Do I hit this and knock off the shield? Do I leave the shield on it and then overwhelm with something later to push in like the 3 damage? And it just came down to all of this minutia, all of these tiny decisions, and it was really fun. Even if I lost, I would not have cared. They were great games just because of like the back and forth, and you had to like really, really think, really, really strategize and try and do it. And even like, I think it's like a credit to this game how good it is that even in a pre-release pool of kind of like random cards that you can end up with these really layered, really difficult, really complex game states and decisions that really go back and forth and involve so much of that. And they were really, really great games. What it came down to at the end was he had, again, I think it was lethal on board, and so did I. It was like really close. We were always kind of getting each other up into 22 at about the same time, even with all my healing on my cloud cars, just because he was able to push so much damage. He was able to deal quite a bit with like really big, really buffed, upgraded units, and I didn't have like a lot of good ways to get those upgrades off unless I drew a discerning veteran or something, and it was hard to trade into them because they would be so big that you couldn't profitably trade, so it made it pretty rough. So I think like main deck upgrade removal, if you can get it, I just really did not have great versions of that. The way that I ended up winning was I kind of functionally time walked him. I had a village protectors out. Moment of Glory came in clutch again, not just helping me win the first match there, helping me win the second one. And these were the only 2 times I played it, but both times I played it, I won the game right off of it. Uh, I turned the village protectors into a 6/6. They had shield. They had Val out with all the equipment on, but they would have had to run it into the village protectors. I had like 3 ground units that were untapped at that point. Again, something that you really have to think about, because they know if they're going to run into your thing, you're able to crack back and kill their thing. And so like, when do you attack, when do you not attack, what do you attack with, what do you leave open to threaten what they're doing? Just really great gameplay back and forth there in the finals. It was great. And then so they were 6/6, and also they had Mando leader out, but he had some damage on him, so he couldn't attack into them unless he would also die. And they didn't want him to die because you want to keep him around to tap down some of my stuff. So it made it really rough. I think he basically had to pass there unless he wanted to lose both of his units. I was able to swing in. I think I had a Delphi. I had either the Adelphi in the sky or the assault cruiser. I know I had some sky presence, so I was able to attack for like 8 or so just with like my units I had out, like after the passing or after the claiming. And then I was able to just finish out the game from there because I just had like, I was able to hit for like 8 both turns or something like that, and then win the game out that way. But fantastic games. Shout out to the people I played out against there. It was really, really fun. Just to play that. I think that'll be it for today. If you like the content, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I usually post Carabas gameplay throughout the week. And just with different decks, different builds. It's fun since this new set has come out. So if you want to see that kind of a thing, and I do post things like this when I attend tournaments, but most of my stuff is Carabas gameplay. So if you've made it this far, you're a champ. Thank you for watching. If you have any advice like on the deck building, like you see a line that I missed, I'd love to hear it, or what you think could have been done with the build that I had. Other than that, thanks again. I'll see you later.